On December 15, 2014, Hong Kong's umbrella movement came to an end. For 79 days, protesters had occupied key thoroughfares throughout the city, demanding what they had been promised when the former British colony was handed over to China, the right to elect their own leaders. The government refused to concede, and although protesters were forcibly removed, they vowed to continue fighting, to take their struggle from the streets into the halls of power.
Back then, when we were campaigning for the Legislative Council election, we were having slogans about both sides, we have to be on, inside the chamber, outside the chamber. These are ways to make changes. Of course, at the end of the day, we still believe that the structural change will always happen from pressure outside of the system. But having a platform, having a voice inside the system helps you to promulgate your agenda and broadcast your voice more effectively.
From the ashes of the umbrella movement, new parties, headed by young activists like Nathan Law, arose. The despair many felt about the protest failure turned into hope for a new generation to change the system from within.
The next day, they just went into the election and formed political parties. So for them, there's no divide between these two forms of political participation. And that actually shows that they really do have great faith on electoral democracy. I would say that this generation into society evinces a very optimistic outlook.
But sadly, it was a misplaced optimism. Despite making history as the youngest lawmaker ever elected in Hong Kong, Law was disqualified, along with other pro-democracy election winners. The legal interpretation that enabled this came directly from Beijing. Nonetheless, Hong Kongers' determination to work within their flawed semi-democracy was an inspiration for many from Taiwan's own Sunflower Movement earlier the same year, including protester-turned-politician Meredith Huang.
我觉得被香港影响很大，因为我们看到黄之锋，我们看到罗冠聪，我们看到很多人，他们直接站出来，然后他们就算知道他们站出来有非常多会让他们自己可能很痛苦的处境，他们还是决定站出来。我觉得这件事情其实影响了蛮多当时参与了太阳花运动，但后来选择做幕僚，后来又选择站出来到第一线，像是我这样子的人，我觉得我们受到香港众志的影响非常非常大。
This weekend, Hong Kong again goes to the polls, again in the first Legislative Council election after a major round of protests. But this time, there will be no opposition candidates. Under a massive overhaul of the electoral system imposed by Beijing, directly elected legislators have been reduced to a small minority in the chamber. And anyone hoping to run must pass intensive vetting by the new National Security Police. Nathan Law is now a wanted man in Hong Kong, continuing the struggle for democracy in exile.
I think if you were asking people not only in 2014, if you asked them in 2019, whether they would foresee Hong Kong in 2021 to become in the shape that we are witnessing, I bet most of them, they didn't really expect that coming. So I think in every intersection of the historical events, we could only do our best to do what we ought to do. So, I mean, in 2014, 2019, we're just doing what we feel we should do and what we feel was right.
His story illustrates how great the cost of doing what's right in Hong Kong can be, but also the tenacity of the dream of a free and democratic home that he sacrificed that very home for. A dream that refuses to die, whatever the weather may bring. Ryan Ho Kilpatrick and Chris Ma for TaiwanPlus.